One day, when the glory comes, it'll be ours, it'll be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, oh, glory, oh, glory, 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 oh, glory, glory. Now the war is not over, victory isn't won. We'll fight on to the finish, then when it's all done, we'll cry glory, glory, oh, glory, oh, glory, glory. We'll cry glory, glory, oh, glory, glory, oh, glory, glory. One day, when the glory comes, it'll be ours, it'll be ours. One day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Glory. Glory. I want to first say so much appreciation and thanks for the preparation song, the preparation ritual. Every time I come to visit, the red carpet is just rolled out, and I just feel so welcome when I walk in the door every single time. And I just want to tell everybody thank you for that. I appreciate it. I saw a lot of inspiration. Storytellers like myself, we absorb like a sponge everything that we see when we get into a space. And this morning, there's one young man that's just,
Jackson.
if I had any nervousness, Jackson, if I had any nervousness, Jackson, thank you very much. And I know I'm not the only one who noticed it, because I, again, was absorbing and looking around. I saw the delight that he brought everybody that he came in contact with. Give us free, famous words depicted in the Steven Spielberg movie Amistad, from the courtroom of one of America's first civil rights cases. American Black history told from a perspective that didn't exactly mirror the truth of the entire situation of the freed Mende captives of La Amistad. Just like the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, which decried that Negroes of the Abraham Lincoln America were free. We know that even today, though not literally in bondage, many of us are still not free. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, as the nation approached its third year of bloody civil war. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforth shall be free. The very celebration of Juneteenth, however, exemplifies that "give us free" cry as more freedom finally came on June 19th, 1865, when some 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, Texas. I want you to pay attention to the numbers. I want you to pay attention to the story, because I put some tricks in here, and I have some things up my sleeve. The Army announced that more than 250,000 enslaved black people in the state were free by executive decree. This day came to be known as Juneteenth by the newly freed people in Texas. Now, one could, or maybe even we could ask, why did it take approximately 2 years or more for the liberation of the last formerly enslaved people to be liberated? Well, for some time, it was a mystery. You read these books and do this research, and you find out new information every time you go back for a deep dive. But high speculations dictate that slaveholders in Galveston just didn't want to let a good thing like hundreds of years of free labor just go. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. Henry Louis Gates wrote that it was uncommon for slaveholders to generally to continue to, it was very uncommon for them to let them go, and very common to continue to hold their legally emancipated enslaved prisoners until Union soldiers were brought into town to enforce the decree. Also, further research reveals that because of a shortage of Union soldiers, the law was simply hard to enforce. But for the enslaved men, women, and children of Galveston, that day finally came on June 19th, 1865. The name Juneteenth references the date of the holiday, combining the words June and 19th. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger led the Union soldiers to Galveston, Texas, to announce the end of the war and the freedom of all enslaved people. It is said that General Granger read the order. It is said that. Remember about the tricks I told you. Listen carefully. I'm a wordsmith, so I'm going to word this carefully. I want you to hear that. I don't want you to fall into the trap. It is said that General Granger read the order. Order number 3 to the slaves, and there are even poignant paintings that depict that moment, that momentous day, as it purportedly read, "The people are informed that in accordance with proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights, rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them become that between employer and hired labor. The freed are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages." Did you hear that? "They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere." It's saying right there, there's going to be no welfare for you guys. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But one thing, there were no boots. So it was designed from the very beginning to fail, this experiment. Oh, the stories and depictions, either in print, portraits, prose, or poetry, illustrate this momentous occasion where all enslaved persons were truly set free, right? There was great jubilation. Yeah, just like that. Many liberated Negroes leaving plantations immediately, some staying voluntarily or involuntarily until a crop was harvested. But tragically, upon attempting to leave the plantation grounds, many were bushwhacked. You know what that means, right? Some were killed, trying to leave and go to live their own lives as free and equal citizens. This is just one of the more tragic scenarios of the story that is the official end to the institution of slavery. They were given no leg up. Many were uneducated, but many had skills honed by the years in servitude. I believe that we're still paying the price of slavery in our nation, sadly, even today. So give us free. Recently, I was made privy to another story. And we know as we continue to research our rich history, our rich African, yet American history, we continue to unearth granules of the real truth of the struggles of our humanity. Take, for instance, the story that General Granger, a white man, read the order number 3. I think you're getting there with me now. Phyllis Coley, CEO and publisher of Spectacular Magazine, who is also the North Carolina Juneteenth State Director under the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, recently interviewed and revealed that on Shove-Off Day, a black regiment of the U.S. colored troops of 4,000, not 2,000, 4,000 approximately, in May of 1865, on their way with the actual order number 3 to Mexico, because Maximilian was attempting to make Texas a part of Mexico. Part of their duty was to inform the enslaved in rural Texas that they were free. And because of a storm, the ship they were on docked in Galveston. So this was just circumstantial. And the colored troops under the command of General Granger debarked the ship, leaving Granger on board. He never even got off the ship. And everything that I've studied before this year and pictures that I've seen, there's Granger holding the scroll and reading it. Then those black men with guns and bullets in their pockets. That's important to note, because a lot of black men in service, they were holding guns that had no bullets in them. They themselves posted order number 3, and on the door of the colored church in Galveston. That church is now known as Reedy Chapel Church. And the then pastor of the church, he's who actually informed the enslaved. They were indeed, at that time, free. And this is called Shove-Off Day. It's the day that the United States colored troops left Virginia on May 25th, headed towards Mexico. It took them from that day till June 19th, 1865, and that was the original Juneteenth. That was the day of jubilation. Juneteenth was later celebrated for the first time in 1866, 1 year after emancipation. Freedmen and their families gathered in rural communities and burgeoning freedom colonies to rejoice with parades, dances, church services, hallelujahs, community feasts, and tears. In East Texas, Anderson County, freedmen created fireworks by drilling holes in trees and filling them with gunpowder. And the emancipated men, and women, they would take a surname. A lot of people became Joseph Freeman, Mary Freeman. They took that last name. When I come back another time, I'll tell you about how my great-grandfather, he didn't take that name. He came up with his own. Greatheart. Yeah. Some communities purchased land specifically to hold their celebrations, such as when Houston's Reverend Jack Yates raised celebrations. He raised $1,000 in 1872 for what would be named a place called Emancipation Park in the 3rd Ward. A similar effort in 1898 in Mexia, Texas, yielded Booker T. Washington Park, which often saw 20,000 celebrants at its Juneteenth celebrations. However, there was a noticeable shift in Juneteenth celebrations after World War I. African Americans were forced to examine their emancipation celebrations after World War I. Since few civil rights were furthered and segregation, the threat of violence and voter suppression in southern states expanded, Juneteenth celebrations that once had included long and inspiring speeches by Black politicians who had given voice to political ambition and civil rights turned instead to venues of entertainment and commercialism. Well, that's no different than a lot of our celebrations. They turn commercial. Today's events follow that trend with parades, rhythm and blues, and hip-hop concerts, health screenings, and job fairs. But a typical modern Juneteenth celebration might also include a prayer breakfast, reflections, and about the plight of Black communities, panel discussions featuring prominent historians, and an emphasis on passing along knowledge and appreciation of heritage and culture to the youth. By celebrating Juneteenth, we celebrate many Black Texans who not only endured but survived and created a community whose legacy of accomplishments will extend far beyond their lifetime, says Reverend Ron Gooden, a history professor at Prairie View and A&M. He says, "We celebrate the many Black Texans who not only endured but survived and created a community whose legacy of accomplishments will extend far beyond their lifetimes." While Texas is the origin point of Juneteenth, Milwaukee boasts having as many as 70,000 celebrants. They're getting close to us. The Great Migration saw a mass exodus of African Americans from the South beginning in the mid-1910s, and my family was one of them. How about you? As Black families relocated to the Midwest, Northeast, my family in the Northwest, Juneteenth traveled with them. I feel a kinship to Galveston. Mary Pargo, a festival organizer in Minnesota, told the Dallas Morning News in 2017, unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 crisis and social distancing measures, this year's Juneteenth celebrations remains uncertain, and we lived through that, so we know. I was nowhere near capable of grasping the magnitude of Juneteenth as a young boy, says one researcher, picnicking in Prairie View. But as an adult approaching senior citizen status, I can't help but smile and reflect on my youthful naivete while appreciating my mature, learned point of view now. Last year, I marched down Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, he says, during East Austin's Juneteenth celebration. As I surveyed the crowd, I saw people of all ethnicities participating in a joyful spirit, bright smiling faces of little Black girls with braided hair, Buffalo soldiers in full uniform and horseback, and folks in dashikis. This is actually called a grand boo-boo, but hey, we're not here for fashion tips. Once we reached our final destination, the historic Rosewood Park, my senses were overwhelmed by the sweet, smoky smell of barbecue, harmonious cacophony of loud, laughing conversations and music, the playful screams of children playing tag. Yet in my core, I always wonder what it must have been like and how I would have reacted on that day in 1865 to be told, you are free. Woo! And now, in 2023, Juneteenth, which has proven to be a rebirth of jubilant Juneteenth, especially in the wake of the celebration gaining national recognition. All 50 states in the District of Columbia recognize Juneteenth as a holiday or observance, and at least 22 states in the District of Columbia have designated Juneteenth as a permanent paid and or legal holiday through legislation or executive action going back to 2021. Like that. That's correct. That is correct. This year marks the second year of Juneteenth's federal recognition. Emancipation Day, Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Juneteenth Day, Black Independence Day, all are monikers that regale a momentous occasion in American history. How do we celebrate? With community-centric events of laughing, dancing, singing, shouting, with cookouts and choirs. Now, there's a difference between a cookout and a barbecue. I'll tell you about that when I come back too. We also have parades and drumming and bearing witness, preaching, prayerful readings, and acknowledging our ancestors of African and American heritage. Me, myself, it's been a busy season. And you're right, Reverend Tamara is real smart because she knew that it was going to be busy. And she goes, no, I want you to come on this day. She booked her stuff 7 months ago. I wore this to a gala last night. I'm going to be somewhere else in Middletown tomorrow. This has become the hot ticket. We also mark the day by holding flag-raising ceremonies of the special Juneteenth flag in communities and capitals around the nation. And you may have received that flag in your program this morning. He said, I got mine. A CNN report states that the Juneteenth flag is full of symbolism. You might see another red, white, and blue flag flying this weekend over state capitals and city buildings. That banner with a bursting star, if you look at it, in the middle is the Juneteenth flag, a symbolic representation of the end of slavery in the United States. The flag is the brainchild of activist Ben Keitt, founder of the National Juneteenth Celebration Foundation. Keitt created the flag in 1997 with the help of collaborators and Boston-based illustrator Lisa Jean Graff. They brought their vision to life. Now, we got a lot of flags. When I got here, I saw on the program there's the LGBTQ flag. Well, here's another one for you. Colorful flags are nice things. The flag was revised in 2000 into the version we now know today. And according to the National Juneteenth Observation Foundation, 7 years later, the date June 19, 1865 was added to the bottom, commemorating the day that 4,000 colored troops rode into Galveston. Did you guys catch that? So the story is ever evolving. 4,000 colored troops rode into Galveston, Texas, and told enslaved African Americans of their emancipation. This country has so many aspects to it that are spiritual, and I believe this flag is one of those and in that nature. It all just came through to the designers, and it just made them feel, that's why that burst is in there, because it's that burst of energy. Designing the flag and its symbol was a deliberate process, Keitt says. Here's what each element of the flag stands for. You see the star. Everybody who knows anything about Texas knows that Texas is the lone star. The white star in the center of the flag has a dual meaning. For one, it represents Texas and the lone star. But the star also goes beyond Texas, representing the freedom of African Americans in all 50 states. The bursting outline around the star is inspired by a nova, a term that astronomers use to mean a new star. On the Juneteenth flag, this represents a new beginning to the African Americans of Galveston and throughout the land. And then there's an arc. And the arc that extends across the width of the flag represents a new horizon, the opportunities and promise that lie ahead for Black Americans And then there are the colors. The red, white, and blue represent the American flag, a reminder that slaves and their descendants were and are Americans. So, as I close, I recognize that our country's history, and there's going to be a dark side of it, that is, if the truth be told. But when there is divine, clean, wonderful, and blessed energy rising from past challenges, we must embrace it. We must celebrate it. And by the grace of the Creator, we strive to emerge from our dark past. For we know enough to ask ourselves, are we really out of the midst of our misery? Are my people really free? Is the modern-day penal system the actual institution of policing in America, the original slave patrol, permeating the moral landscape in a venerable manner? After all, it was created in the Carolinas in the early 1700s with one mission: to establish a system of terror and squash slave uprisings with capacity to pursue, apprehend, and return runaway slaves to their owners. So, it is designed in our inheritance today. How do we leverage the pain of the PTSD that is our legacy from slavery? I often said during COVID that African Americans were suffering the challenges of a couple of pandemics. Jubilation Day is a day to reflect on where we have been, where we are, and where we are going as a nation, as a people, as a congregation. So I say to you, amen. Ashe and namaste, today and always. Give us free.